Hello, I'm Kevin Wenning. I thought in addition to writing an article, I might as well go ahead and show you around my home studio, show you what equipment I use, and do a little bit of explanation. This video is not meant to replace reading the article. There is some useful information in the article that I'm not covering for you in the video. Personally, I always find it useful if somebody shows to me what they're using, gives me a little bit of explanation to go along with just reading the article. And then, of course, if you do have questions, leave them in the comments. I'll be paying attention here and reply to your comments there so I can help answer any questions you have as well. So before I jump right into the equipment, I want to show you first of all what you can expect as far as the output and the recording quality based on the recommendations that I'm giving you here. So what you saw there was an opening. This right here is a bumper for the video. Just open it, and then I always do an introduction where I talk about the guest, give a little bit of bio as far as who they are. Most of the guests that I talk to, I do prep them on what we're doing so they have their video ready, they've got their audio set up. Galen was in a place here on this interview where he didn't have a real great internet connection, so his video was a little bit grainy, but that didn't really matter to me. So during the course of this conversation, we got into a little bit of his photography, and we were talking about his visuals, and that really is my medium. So I'm overlaying, our video together with the photos that we're talking about during the conversation. And let me jump back here a little bit. When I am talking to somebody and their video really is not coming through, or they even don't want to be on camera with me, then I'll take the visuals off of their website, off of their Instagram, or just overlay photos themselves onto the conversation so that we have a little bit of something to lead the conversation and a little bit of interest in the video podcast. This is a good example of a bumper that you would want to add to the front or the end of your video. So I do a little introduction, a little teaser about what the video is about, have a little 15 to 20 second clip, and then I do a little bit of pre-roll with my logo, a little bit of animation, and then the cover card. So right at the beginning, your audience can get a little bit of an idea of what the episode is about, what you're going to talk about, rather than having to watch 10 or 15 minutes in before they really understand what the conversation is about. So that's what a bumper or a pre-roll on your video accomplishes for you. And based on the equipment setup that I'm going to show you here in just a second, this is roughly the type of quality that you can expect from your video. And this is usually what I get. You're going to get something similar if you use Skype, or my preferred call recording software is Zoom, but you're going to get something similar out of Skype where it's got the panels side by side. I like Zoom because it gives me the option to show that video up in the corner while I'm showing a full screen share of the person's website or some photos or other things that we're talking about. All right, so let me show you the equipment that I use. I'll just cover this real quick and do some brief explanation. So, this is my space that I have in my home office. And I've got a few things here. First of all, I hope what you can see here is it's very simple. Some people have setups where they've got wires running everywhere, control boards and soundboards and all sorts of microphones and everything just for one setup. What I've got here is two different setups. And first of all is the stool there in the middle of the room. That is where I sit and do self-addressed talks to this camera over here. I don't have this set up all the time. This is super simple. It takes me about 5 minutes to set up when I do want to do one of these recordings. The only reason that tripod is sitting there is that is where I would normally sit, and that helps me to pull focus. So I'll set this camera up and then focus on that, and that means that my face is going to be in focus when I'm sitting on that stool talking to this camera. Pretty simple. So the two lights that I've got on this setup are this one over here where I'm pointing, and then this one over here. Those are my two lights. Turn them on, and I've got side light so that it eliminates the shadows. I did a lot of photography before I started doing any of this video podcasting, so off-camera lighting is something I've got a little bit of practice with. It's not complicated. These two lights that I've got here are just simple LED video lights, very, very inexpensive. I bought them for, I want to say $40 a piece off of Amazon. And the nice thing about these guys too, if you do buy some sort of LED video light, this takes a little battery in here. Plus it's also got an AC input, so you can run it just on a cord. And then these batteries for it are also fairly inexpensive. Again, I think I've spent about $45, $50 for two of these batteries plus a charger for them. And I use these all the time. So it's nice to have the batteries on them rather than just running cords all over the floor that I trip over. So those are my two video lights. Also, I'll go ahead and show you on this one over here. I've got these set to daylight, and you might notice that like this light up here and the one on the other side of my room. Those have daylight bulbs in them, which means 6500K. Just means that they have a real nice white light to them. And these video lights that I got also have a CTO gel, which just means color temperature orange, or gives it a nice yellow glow. So it warms up your video. So if you like warmer light, try and get something with a nice little color temperature orange gel. And these are just magnetic and go on the front of there. So this is my advanced camera for doing self-address videos where I'm talking directly to the camera. It does make a difference. It does have a little bit higher quality, and you can see that in just the type of lens and everything else. You don't have to have something like this. This is one of those luxury items. And then also I've got a nice little video light that sits on top of it on the hot shoe for front lighting and just getting rid of a little bit of the shadows. This is a really nice one. I want to say $120-ish I paid for this one, and a Lytra. Just a really nice, handy little light that does just about everything. Again, has its own inbuilt battery, so I don't have to run any cords to that. So that's my camera setup. And then, of course, put it on a tripod so you don't have to handhold anything. All right, and then the space where I do recordings where I'm talking with a guest and I'm doing my interviews, I've got my laptop plugged into a secondary monitor. No need to have the second monitor, really. I just already have that, so it's already set up. Up here on the top is my really nice microphone. I've got it on a little boom arm, and the only reason I have this really nice microphone is my camera store where I buy a lot of my equipment had it used. Somebody had turned it in, they purchased it off of somebody, and they were reselling it, and it was in great shape, so I purchased it. It was about $400 less than it would be if I bought it new. The only disadvantage to this one, it's got an XLR mic input on it, which you would see on any kind of studio type of mic. And that means that I had to buy this iTrack Solo to plug it in just so my computer can see the microphone. But normally, if you're going to buy any kind of podcasting microphone, all you need is a standard USB connection. You don't have to have any kind of a mixer or anything. And then as far as my interview camera goes, I've got the Logitech Brio up there. It is sitting on a tripod. You can certainly mount that just right on top of your monitor, which is what most people do. But since I had an extra tripod sitting around, and I wanted to be able to direct it specifically, I went ahead and set it on a tripod there, along with a little ball head. Again, not necessary, but I just had them on hand, so I went ahead and set that up. And then as far as my lighting over here in the corner, I do have one ring light up behind my monitor so that you can see my face while I'm talking and doing interviews. I think you can see this right here. So this is, again, a $30 special off of Amazon. Not any kind of fancy lighting setup, but what I'm going to do here is change the temperature color of that ring light. And that's the daylight. That's the color temperature orange, so if you really like your warm videos. And then that's the in-between setting. So personally, I like the in-between setting. I think it has the most natural look to it. It's kind of hard to tell there on the monitor, but we'll jump next into the software. And this is the ScreenFlow interface. I'll go ahead and do a screen share of that and talk about the software here for just a minute. So the software that I use for recording my screen, if I'm doing a demo of something where I'm editing photos, if I'm showing somebody else's website, if I'm showing their gallery or their portfolio while we're talking, that is ScreenFlow. That's my personal favorite. So I'm going to just show you what that interface looks like. It's really dead simple, and that's what I love about it. You don't have to have any kind of expertise to know what's going on here. So when you set up a new recording, you can pick which monitor you want to record from. If you've got more than one monitor attached to your computer, same goes for audio inputs and video inputs. So I'm recording from an attached webcam. You can also record from your internal webcam, and then also pick which microphone. And obviously you're going to have a lot of different setups. The iTrack Solo is the one that I run my special microphone through, and a lot of them are going to be USB microphones, but they'll all show up in here so long as you have them plugged into the computer. So there's really no setup that you have to do to make that work. And then you can record computer audio as well. I rarely find that to be useful unless you're doing screen capture demos, which I'm not going to get into here because this is all about video podcasting, and usually I'm doing interviews, or I'm doing like what you're seeing here, which is a self-address. I'm showing you a kind of a how to do something essentially. Okay, and then once you got all of your video done, all of your audio done, you've put it all together on your timeline, done all of your video overlays, your photo overlays, what have you. You'll have it all here in your editor. And I don't want this to look like it's an advertisement for ScreenFlow. I have no affiliation with them. I've used a lot of different softwares over the years, and this is the one I like the best because it's very full featured for the price that you pay for it. I think I bought it for $129 initially, and they do yearly updates to it with new features, new cool stuff that you can do in it, and their yearly updates are like $35, $40. So it's always worth it for me. I get some good value out of those upgrades on a yearly basis. And the other nice thing about this software is the learning curve is very low, which ideally, if you're getting into something that you're going to do on a regular basis, you want it to be low lift. A lot of people are going to use something like Adobe Premiere. If you really want that high production value, I haven't found that necessary for myself. Another software that I do use a lot, especially if I'm doing live video, so Facebook Live, if you're doing a YouTube Live, something like that, OBS Studio is a free software. There's a little bit of learning curve to this. I've run across some really good videos on YouTube for just explaining how to set it up because it can be a little bit involved. Once you've got it set up though, you'll have scenes down here. I reinstalled it just last week and I lost all my scenes apparently because I wiped my computer. So I've got to go rebuild all of those. But you can add anything and everything that's attached to your computer. So you can record an individual window, which is just one application if you want to show that without showing the whole monitor. Display capture would be like everything you see here, including the photo that's in the background. Window would be just the application, of course. And then any other sources that you have. You can also do split screen on this. That would be a template that you have to build for yourself. But OBS is a very full-featured software for something that is super simple and free. And then, of course, you can, do your streaming. So you pick where you're streaming from. You can add private servers, anything else that you want to in there as well. So OBS is the best thing to use if you're doing live videos, especially, even if it's just yourself talking to a camera like this, or if it's with somebody else. And you can even invite other people into your stream, like that are on your Twitter feed or people that are on your Facebook Live. So I won't get into too much terrible detail there. The one important thing that I did want to cover for you in the softwares here is your input settings and your export settings. So when you're setting it up, I already covered that for you, which cameras, which mics, which screens, which applications can you record. So make sure you get something where you can add all of those input sources if you need to. Very important for video podcasting, more so than audio podcasting. And then your export settings. Let's go to export. I do have some recommended settings in the article down below, and those are based on, usually I'm doing videos up to about an hour long, and I picked those export settings because I need to stay below a certain file size, so I can't upload bigger than 2 gig to my hosting servers. So the file size matters as far as the hosting platform that you're going to be uploading it to, as well as if you do decide to push the video through to a podcasting platform for people to watch there, it doesn't necessarily affect the size of the RSS feed. They'll be able to fetch the RSS feed to view your podcast quickly. However, when they want to download an episode, it's going to take a while because it's going to go to the server, fetch that entire file, and download it to their device. So it's more friendly if you draw people into a website or to your YouTube channel or your Facebook channel for them to view it there. And they're more likely to sit in front of a big monitor and watch it as well than they are to view it on a cell phone for a number of different reasons. So read the article. I talked about it there. Export settings, though, that you might want to know here. So I usually go to manual, and then I customize this. And then I usually go to 5,000 K per second, and then hardware accelerated. Audio, I usually don't touch. But the reason that you would want to know what your export settings are is if you do need to make the file size a little bit smaller. So audio, I usually would drop down to 128. That's where, at least for myself, I'm not an audiophile. I don't care about super high quality audio. I can drop it down there, and that's where I don't notice too much degradation in the audio quality, but it does make my file size quite a bit smaller. And then this is another thing that you'll change is the data rate. It just has to do with how many frames is it putting in there? How much data is it putting into the frames, rather? Frame rate, I usually leave at 30. You can crank this up, go, I don't know why, there it is, 60 frames per second. Is useful if you're doing something like action, where you've got filmed, bikes or, people in motion or any kind of sports. So it'll make your video a little bit smoother if you have a higher frame rate. For myself, 30 frames per second is just fine. I'm standing here in front of a computer just talking. So nothing that we need to be aware of there. So play with those, but you want a software that lets you adjust your own output for both the quality reasons and the size of the file that you're outputting. That matters. And then always output at 1920 by 1080. You can definitely go larger. If I record at the size of my full monitor here, it's 2048 by 1152. So if I'm recording like a tutorial where I'm recording a screen on my, or a window on my screen, it's going to grab that at that size, but then I always output it at 1920 by 1080. You don't need anything larger than that unless you're doing, broadcast quality and you really want to. That's another thing that will affect also the file size that you output. So if you wanted to crank this way up because you feel like you need more pixels, go nuts. Just make sure that you're not making your file size too large. Use motion blur. You may or may not have this in your output software. This just means that, like when I'm standing here talking and gesturing with my hands as I like to do, if I use the motion blur, it'll be a little bit smoother. If I don't put any motion blur on, it'll look like I'm all choppy and my face is all pixelated. And so motion blur is always good, especially if you've got video where you're focusing on somebody's face. You really want to get all of their movements nice and buttery smooth. And then we export it. I'm not going to export that now because you don't need to see that. It'll take a little while to crank through processing the video and turning it into a completed video file. And like for this one, I've got a 10-minute timeline. It'll probably take about 15 to 20 minutes to process this. For my hour-long videos, usually takes around 2 hours to process that whole thing and crunch it down into an MP4 file that I then upload to my YouTube and my Facebook and my website. So that's it. That's all of my tips and tricks as far as my home studio, my equipment, and definitely read the article. Leave me questions and comments. I'll be paying attention and get back to you so I can answer anything. If you're just getting started off, keep in mind, don't get too fancy and too expensive. What you saw here that I kind of walked you around my studio and showed you are little things I've accumulated over the years. You don't really need anything more than a laptop and the speaker and the camera on your laptop to get you started. And then you can kind of work your way up from there as you decide, I want to add a little bit more production quality here. I want to add a little bit better mic. I want to add, sound deadening material above my monitor to make myself sound a little bit more professional. Whatever catches you that you feel like you can upgrade a little bit without spending too much money on, start going that direction. All right, I'm rambling. Cheers. Enjoy your video podcasting.